Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditative practice that enters a space of mindfulness through the act of drawing. This week we'll explore a meditation on tension, branching, and mapping. Putting these words together in various orders. Right? We might start with a little bit of a branching structure, something to give shape to the voids of the page, reading those voids, letting them transform, become something else, volumes, and then building a surface out of the tension between branching voids, branching volumes, and the interconnected layers of geometry, points, lines, curves, and surfaces on the page. This exercise builds a little bit off of some of the formal qualities of last week's exercise, just a thing maybe in the mind, but we'll end in a very different place, a unique way of looking at it with more tectonic and structure to the pieces, less about the process, more about what we find in the map of the paper. If you're familiar with architecture and architectural history, you might find some similarities to the bubble structures, the form-active tensile membrane structures of people like Frei Otto and Isler. That we're exploring these tectonic systems. For myself, it's also interesting as it works with kind of the pneumatics, the shaping of space with air and flowing curves along lines of force and tension to then solidify into some kind of structural proposition, some kind of formal proposition. You might see spider webs, kernels of corn, packed fields. Whatever visual metaphors come to mind as we draw, we'll build them up slowly, layer by layer, curve by curve, line by line, and they'll unfold in your own mind as your own creative interface to this page and drawing. So follow it where it takes you. Don't worry about what I'm making or what I'm seeing, but use the curves, use the lines, feel the force, the tension, the manipulation that you can have through a simple interaction with a pen or pencil and a paper and a little imagination. Open up your mind, gather your supplies, and let's draw together. The, general idea arching through this is a bit of branching and packing in. You might think of an ear of corn combined with a bit of a lightning bolt or something, if that makes any visual metaphorical sense. So to start with a little bit of branching. Could just have something that works its way along that looks a bit like a branch from a tree, a little line there. And then we know from that if it's a branch, there's things that come out from it. Maybe it's the spine of a leaf, these longer extensions that come out. Those extensions could also have their own little branches to them. And so in some form or another, there's a bit of a linear branching pattern that might head out across the page. And that gives us a structure with the spine and linear elements, and the structure with the space in between. And what we'll explore a little bit is that space in between, stemming from the space defined by the branches, and then seeing if that can inform another layer of shape and figure to it. Branch doesn't need to have this kind of dendritic structure. It'll get small or big. It could be more like a spider web or something pulled in between string, whatever forms out there on the paper. And then after that, what we'll do is just kind of look at the shapes that happen in between them, whether they can be thought of as kind of a bubble or a series of bubbles that press against the boundaries defined by that curve and start to fill it out, and then we'll see where that takes us. That'll be the general structure to the drawing part of it. So go ahead and set up the page, get the body ready and established. Maybe just a little bit of movement back and forth in the chair, a little side to side. Just something to wake up the place that you're sitting in, to get a sense of your connection, your base in the chair or standing, whichever way you might be. Roll the shoulders a couple of times, make sure they're loose, work out a few of those pops and crunches. And as you're ready, let the eyes take in the space of whatever page you're working with. The blank canvas, texture, the edges and boundaries, and its orientation relative to you, whether it's fixed as it is here, or movable in a sketchbook or something like that. Just notice where it is now and how you will engage with that with your body. And then somewhere along there, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, meandering, we'll make that first seam of a branch. Something that just zigzags its way a little bit through the space of the page, heading off in a direction and turning back straight, going to the side. Can zig and zag, and just get our hand moving across the paper there. Whatever we end up with is the start of a system. That bit of a divide between two parts of the paper, lightly if it doesn't go to the ends, or heavily if it goes all the way. Working out a little bit of territory. We'll let that first split, that first division, branch out to create further divisions. For myself, I think I'll have kind of longer ones that just head towards the edge but never quite meet it. And this will bring a bit of speed or slowness, as it may be, a bit of breath to each one of these. Having some time in between each mark to think about where you're engaging with the place before. So at any change of direction, intersection, or point of branching that your eyes identify, go ahead and take a nice deep breath in to fill out, to be ready for that point. And as you need the exhale, have a line extend somewhere off into the page. Maybe it has its own kinks or branches, or goes more straight. Play with that as we move along. Noticing the change in the paper, the change now with 3 places starting to form. We'll keep dividing. The next inhale, finding another branching point. Think of its direction, and as you're ready, exhaling it out into the field of empty paper space. Now 4 areas begin to take shape. We'll continue on this cycle, getting a little bit more pace and rhythm to the inhalation as we identify places of branching. Let the hand and eye take in direction. And then the exhalation reflects that first intuition and imagining from that point of departure, the branch taking us out into the page. Repeating the cycle of inhalation and exhalation along a path. Branches can go both directions, in or out. They may stem from new places. Let the eyes guide, the breath follow that guide, take you on the walk of the line. And there are always more places you can extend from as you take a few moments and just enjoy that space of deeper inhalation, noticing an active exhalation, marking. And fill out that narrative, the idea of the branches continuing to divide space on the paper. Filling up the empty territory, a little bit of a growth pattern. Reaching towards the limits of the paper. Each cycle in of the breath, a chance to observe and survey the growing complexity of the page. Each exhalation adding a little bit to that space, generating a good map of vision and branching. You might start to see a lot of different things. Maybe a crack in dry earth, maybe the veins of a leaf, maybe the space between weavings of spiderweb in the visual metaphor may pop into the mind, and that may guide future decisions. We just see it come past as we prepare to read in another layer, layered by layer to the drawing. Each of these little voids in here, a chance to think about what made them, a shrinking or expanding, like kernels in corn, growing out until they press to their neighbors. Begin to emphasize those, looking for a nice soft bubble in there. Doesn't have to meet all the lines, but this reading and changing of the territory, fitting something to it. Another component of the system which came first we'll find towards the end, but in each cell, taking time with each one individually to look for that thing that can squeeze in there, a little bean shape or rock, generally round, easy to flow with the pen or pencil. Getting to know each one by making a few rounds or rotations to it, just to feel it out, press it to its edges, expand or contract it as you find its space in there. Some may be quite large, nice open branches where the space expands, concave, outward expression. Some make it tight or bunch up to fit with multiple in spaces that begin to be held inward, the convex, filling out of the territory. And you can use any visual metaphor or just opportunity to play with these elliptical, ovoid shapes, filling in some of that gap between the branches, populating the divided space with little kernels, potential. And as you move around them, use them as a way into a rhythm. Whether that's through the initiation breath, finding the area of interaction, inhaling, and riding the wave of motion to bring that shape onto the paper. As the exhalation fully exits, the hand follows it in a nice, relaxed state of motion, becoming more familiar with the thing on the page. And starting again, a fresh cycle of the breath. Every once in a while, potential opportunities for new engagements might arise. Let them, but mostly focus forming those shapes, following them through the motion and the cycle of deep inhalation and relaxed exhalation. And a few more, hopefully filling out a good amount of what you've formed on the page, that initial division and branching. We don't need to fill all of it in. The system is active, and we can come back to it at any time, changing its density, its intensity at different sizes of interaction. And make a few final shapes, filling of space between. And you begin to look at them again, another layer of interaction. These bubbles pressing or held, the little gaps between as the round thing meets the straighter thing. An interesting place of opportunity. The tight pinches where bubbles meet bubbles, perhaps a guide of where something can come next. And we have a similar configuration, those places near where bubbles meet, whether they physically touch or overlap a little or just come close to each other. They give you a sense of where their tangents begin to align for a moment. Take a pass through with the eyes and begin to mark those out, maybe changing mediums if you like, or just giving them a bit of an intensity shift, a small dot to highlight the moment. A large circle to really bring it forward. Choosing your level of flexibility with the meeting point. Do they need to touch or just come a little close? Bit of scanning through with the eyes, or reading of a visual territory, sorting of conditions. And I'm marking with a bit of repetitive action. For me, filling in a dot, going around many times, letting ink flow until it becomes a point of interest on the page, feeling that rotation, the quicker, focused movement in one area. Bringing our mindfulness, our attention to that. How we move the pen or pencil. Quick, little sharp movements, broad, slow, smooth movements. Recognizing it and letting it unfold. It happening between the body's pacing and very separate from the breath, but still tied together in one space. Let the eyes take a few larger, broader passes over territory. Have you found all those connections? What have they started to change or show? They begin to build upon any levels of figure repetition shape that is there, add another layer of potential to them. And if we begin to think of this bubbly territory as, again, something more three-dimensional, something like those kernels of corn packed in, cells packed together, these might be slight bubbles. You could build off of that with some simple 2D operations, but if you imagine each one as a bit of a bubble, and from any point to point on that bubble, we could have a line that either flexes, curves along that surface of the bubble, a little arc, a stretching of the surface, a tension to it, really just an arc, a curve on a piece of paper, one that gets from one point to another by being pulled out along something else. And start to look for those and fill them in between points. They can do outward facing or inward facing conditions. Play along as we go, but I think I'll start with big ones, having the arc push inwards, opening up a space to the outside, and trying to follow those curves smoothly. But we can go over them a few times to reinforce their elasticity, their tension, the pulling that gets them from one point to another. Start in the simple places. We might end up in a few areas of more density and complexity. Begin simple and see where it takes us. Big arcs or little arcs, something we can play around with that maybe are informed by the shape below. For near one side where it pinches, perhaps they're a little bit smaller. If there's an aggressiveness or largeness to the curvature, a little bit wider. Each a chance to play with what we see there on the paper. The smaller shape, more pinched between, perhaps has a bit more pull to its arc. The larger shape, more relaxed and just kind of sitting there with a bit lower pull to the arc, or vice versa, whatever your imagination finds in seeing these shapes. Just working our way through the map. One way of reading, one way of connecting points in space. An arc between two. And we are now doing an act of mapping. The territory has its many layers, the structure of the branch, the figure of the bubble, the filling between, the identification of moments, points, tangencies. Now the connection of those moments through arcs, building layer upon layer to a surface, and maybe over time it'll start to become something. But we keep reading the map, reading the territory through that consistent lens. Building out some structure, building out some form. At some point we'll connect all the points that are near to each other. You can always add more branches to keep the drawing going, but we finished another layer in its current state. And we can look for something else to it. Perhaps finding membrane or surface. If I look here towards the primary spine of the original branching, there's kind of a shape fully enclosed with some of its little strange satellites. And I focus in on the enclosed center place of the shape, connecting new things between layers, perhaps reconnecting to the branching structure, using the tool to highlight it, to follow it along and make connections back and forth between the points and the lines underneath, between the intersections, bubbles, and the branch that held them in place. Retracing, again, another layer of mapping the interactions in a territory, geometry, points in space connected to start to form something more. Maybe new opportunities, things that emerged through the act of the drawing, connecting with this new layer of reading to the map. And maybe we can bring a little surface into the simple connecting across, bridging between things. I notice a lot of places where there are center lines of arcs that can reach out across the space to some other branching point due to the alternating nature of the piece. That moment or connection of tension that pulled that arc into place, trying to find a bit of physics to the system. New links across the open area. And some have to make their own links. It doesn't exist. Pulling those arcs back to the spine. The branching becoming more complex. The territory becoming more connected. Getting a little bit more filled in and finding space in the center. We can take those lines of edges, lines of division, lines of tension, and continue to expand them. Have a light hatching or ruling to the surfaces, blending between the lines to distinguish the directionality of a patch. Some maybe tight and triangular, some a little bit more of a bent trapezoid. Taking some time towards the end of the exercise to do a nice, light, repetitive motion of filling in sequence of lines, of ruling, letting that both relax the hand after bringing such precision to things, and let the eye drift out of focus for a little while. We just follow the paths on the page, mapping another layer of interaction. Draw for a couple of minutes in quiet. Close in on one part of the map, a territory with layers of pen and pencil, layers of density, layers of connections, points, curves, arcs, branches, maybe a little bit of surface or figure starts to form, some other potential in there. We can start to explore another layer if we have time, or let the map sit for a while. There's plenty of other territories within it to explore, to consider what they can do as well. The system can continue to unfold. The device, the drawing, generative connection between imagination, between the tool, the instrument that makes a mark, between the page, a medium that accepts it, and a system, underlying connections, can go on forever, making more layer, more complexity, or slowly finding simplicity through structure underneath. And if you feel ready, bring pen or pencil to rest. Let that idea of movement between simplicity and complexity, complexity and simplicity sit in your mind for a while as you leave the exercise. See where that informs other things throughout your day. Take a couple of deep breaths just to settle in the space you are. And then as you're ready, opening the eyes, whether they're already open or just had closed for a while, opening them new to see and take in what's out there. And be ready to move on. As this one unfolds and becomes a personal interest in kind of the architectural sense, these layers of interactions, the plan forming from the tension between elements, the branching, structuring, the relationships of pressure between cells, the membrane connecting it all together, brings forth some of my architectural interests, the things floating around in my mind. But again, yours may take you on very different journeys, and whatever your background is, your visual metaphors that underlie these forces of action we observe in the physical world and how they translate to a drawing that has a little bit more play, a little bit more wiggliness, and doesn't have to be quite as real and precise, but can still reflect those notions to us, build into some connection between the virtual world of a piece of paper that is only points, lines, and curves that we make, and the physical world that we could imagine from that interaction. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and come back usually every week for new episodes of Mindful Drawing to explore your own interface to mindful creativity. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, and draw well. Thank you.